History remembers Rome, and through the lens of its decline, we remember the invasions, the civil wars, the abandoned cities, and the slow disappearance of imperial authority across the West. Yet, collapse is only meaningful because of what came before it. The fall of Rome still fascinates us because, for centuries, Rome appeared to have achieved something no civilization had achieved on the same scale before. It created a world that seemed permanent. If you enjoy learning about history, subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and share it with your friends. In the year 117 CE, under the rule of Emperor Trajan, the Roman Empire reached its greatest territorial extent. Its frontiers stretched from the rugged highlands of Britain to the deserts of Arabia, from the Atlantic coast of Hispania to the rivers of Mesopotamia. Nearly 70 million people lived beneath Roman rule, representing perhaps a quarter of the world's population. Hundreds of cities, thousands of communities, and countless local traditions existed within a political system centered on a single city beside the Tiber River. The achievement was not simply military. History is filled with conquerors. Empires had risen and fallen long before Rome. What distinguished the Roman world was its ability to transform conquest into administration, and administration into stability. Across 3 continents, diverse populations became connected through roads, laws, taxes, trade networks, and institutions that operated with remarkable consistency. The empire did not merely occupy territory, it organized it. At dawn, this vast system revealed itself in countless ordinary moments. In Alexandria, scribes recorded grain shipments destined for the Mediterranean. In Gaul, vineyard workers moved through rows of vines beneath the morning mist. Along the Danube frontier, soldiers emerged from barracks and prepared for patrols beyond the river. In Rome itself, bakers lit their ovens before sunrise, while market vendors arranged goods imported from lands many of their customers would never see. Most of these people would never meet an emperor. Most would never visit the capital. Yet their lives were linked by the same imperial framework. A merchant in Antioch could purchase goods transported across thousands of kilometers. A governor in North Africa could communicate with officials in Rome through a network of roads and couriers unmatched in the ancient world. A traveler departing from Gaul could cross provinces, exchange currency, seek legal protection, and conduct business under institutions that remained broadly recognizable wherever he went. For the ancient world, this degree of connectivity was extraordinary. The Roman road system alone stretched for more than 80,000 kilometers. Built primarily to move armies, these roads soon carried merchants, administrators, travelers, and ideas. Engineers cut routes through mountains, bridged rivers, and paved surfaces with layers of stone designed to endure for generations. Many survived long after the empire that built them disappeared. Along these roads moved the lifeblood of Roman civilization. Olive oil from Hispania, wine from Gaul, marble from Greece, papyrus from Egypt, and grain from the fertile valleys of North Africa all traveled toward distant markets. The empire functioned because movement had become reliable. Distance, while never eliminated, had been reduced to a problem that administration could manage. Yet roads alone could not sustain a civilization of this scale. The true heart of the empire beat upon the Mediterranean Sea. The Romans called it Mare Nostrum, our sea. What had once divided cultures now connected them. Merchant vessels crossed its waters, carrying food, raw materials, luxury goods, and people between provinces separated by thousands of kilometers. Ports expanded into centers of commerce. Warehouses multiplied along coastlines. Entire regions specialized in producing goods for markets they would never directly see. Nowhere was this dependence more apparent than in the city of Rome itself. By the 2nd century, Rome may have approached 1 million inhabitants, making it one of the largest cities on Earth. Such a population could not survive without constant imports. Every year, enormous grain fleets sailed from Egypt and North Africa toward the capital. Their cargoes sustained hundreds of thousands of people who depended upon distant harvests for survival. For most Romans, this system remained invisible. Citizens purchased bread in crowded markets without considering the chain of labor behind it. Farmers harvested grain beside the Nile. Sailors navigated unpredictable seas. Dockworkers unloaded ships. Administrators tracked supplies. Soldiers protected routes. An immense network of human effort connected distant fields to urban tables. The city itself reflected the confidence created by that success. Aqueducts carried fresh water across valleys and hills. Public baths welcomed thousands each day. Temples, theaters, and amphitheaters transformed architecture into a statement of power. Monumental buildings proclaimed a simple message to everyone who entered the city. This order will endure. For many Romans, there was little reason to doubt it. Generations had grown up inside a world where imperial authority appeared as constant as the changing seasons. The roads remained open, the grain ships arrived, the frontiers held, institutions performed their functions with such consistency that few paused to consider how much effort was required to sustain them. Yet beneath the prosperity, tensions already existed. Wealth accumulated unevenly across the empire. Vast estates expanded under elite ownership, while many small farmers struggled to compete. Cities displayed magnificent public monuments, but behind the marble facades lived laborers, tenants, and slaves whose lives remained uncertain. The empire generated extraordinary prosperity, but it did not distribute that prosperity equally. For the moment, these contradictions appeared manageable. Trade continued to expand, tax revenues remained strong, military victories reinforced confidence, success concealed vulnerabilities that were becoming increasingly difficult to see. And that is often how fragility develops within great civilizations. Not through obvious failure, but through prolonged success. The stronger Rome became, the more dependent it grew upon the systems that had created its strength. Roads required maintenance. Armies required payment. Cities required food. Trade required stability. Every achievement created new obligations, and every new obligation increased the consequences of disruption. At the height of its power, Rome appeared stronger than it had ever been. Its cities were larger than ever. Its markets were richer than ever. Its influence stretched farther than ever. And beyond the horizon, pressures were already beginning to gather. The pressures were difficult to see precisely because they emerged from the same forces that had made Rome successful. The empire's prosperity depended upon movement. Grain crossed seas, taxes flowed from provinces, merchants connected distant markets, and armies protected routes that stretched across continents. Each connection strengthened the imperial system, yet each also created a new dependency. A disruption in one region could now affect places hundreds or even thousands of kilometers away. Along the northern frontiers, Roman commanders watched the world beyond the borders. With increasing attention, to many citizens in the Mediterranean heartland, the Rhine and Danube seemed distant lines separating civilization from wilderness. In reality, these frontiers were zones of constant interaction. Traders crossed them. Diplomats negotiated across them. Entire communities depended upon relationships that linked Rome to peoples beyond imperial authority. The border was not a wall dividing two worlds. It was a living frontier where stability required continuous effort. Maintaining that stability demanded enormous resources. By the 2nd century, hundreds of thousands of soldiers served throughout the empire. Their forts stretched from Britain to Syria. They required food, equipment, roads, horses, pay, and constant logistical support. Rome could sustain these obligations because commerce flourished and tax revenues remained strong. Yet every peaceful frontier carried a hidden cost. Security was not a permanent condition. It was an expensive achievement that had to be renewed year after year. At the same time, wealth was becoming increasingly concentrated. Across Italy, Gaul, Hispania, and North Africa, elite families expanded their estates while many small farmers struggled to compete. In prosperous cities, magnificent public buildings projected confidence and order, but beneath the marble facades lived laborers, tenants, and slaves whose futures depended upon economic conditions they could neither predict nor control. The empire appeared unified from a distance, yet the experiences of those living within it varied dramatically. A senator in Rome, a merchant in Alexandria, and a farmer in Gaul all belonged to the same imperial system, but they inhabited very different realities. Their fortunes were tied together by networks of trade, administration, and taxation that few individuals fully understood. As long as prosperity continued, these differences remained manageable. Success concealed tensions that might otherwise have demanded attention. The empire's greatest strength was its scale. Its greatest challenge would also be its scale. Governing such an immense territory required extraordinary coordination. A governor confronting unrest in Syria could not communicate instantly with Rome. News traveled at the speed of horses and ships. Decisions often took weeks to arrive. While Roman administration was remarkably sophisticated for its time, distance remained an unavoidable reality. The larger the empire became, the more difficult it was for any central authority to respond quickly to every problem. This challenge became particularly visible in matters of succession. Rome had created roads, aqueducts, legal systems, and administrative institutions of remarkable durability, yet it never developed a fully reliable mechanism for transferring supreme power. Emperors ruled an empire containing tens of millions of people, but determining who would rule after them often depended upon military support, political alliances, adoption, inheritance, or chance. During periods of competent leadership, this weakness remained hidden. During periods of uncertainty, it could threaten the stability of the entire system. For much of the 2nd century, the empire benefited from capable rulers and relative peace. Historians would later remember this period as one of Rome's golden ages. Yet beneath the prosperity, another pressure was quietly forming. Trade routes that enriched the empire also connected it to distant regions. Stretching across Asia and beyond, goods traveled farther than ever before. Silk, spices, precious stones, and luxury products flowed into Roman markets through vast commercial networks that linked populations previously separated by geography. These routes carried more than merchandise. They carried disease. The same infrastructure that allowed wealth to move efficiently also allowed biological threats to travel with unprecedented speed. Merchant ships, caravans, and military movements connected millions of people within a single system. The empire had created one of history's most successful networks of exchange. In doing so, it had unknowingly created pathways through which future crises could spread across continents. Most Romans remained unaware of these vulnerabilities. The markets were still crowded. The bathhouses were still full. Grain ships continued arriving in port. Across the empire, life carried on with the confidence of a civilization at its peak, yet history rarely announces its turning points in advance. The first signs often appear ordinary: a disturbance on a frontier, a harvest that disappoints, a rumor from a distant province. Then slowly the pattern begins to change. In 165 CE, soldiers returning from campaigns in the east carried more than victory back into the Roman world. Somewhere along the trade routes and military corridors that connected the empire, a disease began moving westward. Historians still debate its exact nature, but its consequences were unmistakable. Cities that had known decades of stability suddenly faced rising mortality. Military camps lost manpower. Families watched healthier relatives fall ill and die within days. The crisis became known as the Antonine Plague. For an empire built upon connectivity, there was no simple containment. The roads that carried commerce also carried infection. Merchant vessels crossing the Mediterranean linked distant outbreaks together. The infrastructure that had helped unify the Roman world now transmitted vulnerability. Through the same channels that once transmitted prosperity, Rome endured the epidemic, but endurance came at a cost. Population losses reduced tax revenues, strained local economies, and complicated military recruitment. Entire regions experienced labor shortages. Confidence, one of the most valuable resources any civilization possesses, became harder to sustain. The empire remained powerful, yet the assumption of effortless stability had been shaken. The decades that followed revealed how difficult it could be to manage a civilization of such scale once growth slowed and pressures accumulated. Along the Rhine and Danube, external threats intensified. In the east, rival powers challenged Roman influence. Maintaining security required ever greater expenditures, even as economic strains became more visible. Then came political instability. During the 3rd century, emperors rose and fell with startling speed. Military commanders competed for power. Civil wars consumed resources that had once protected frontiers. Provinces occasionally broke away from central authority. What had once appeared to be a permanent political order increasingly resembled a system struggling to maintain cohesion under mounting pressure. For ordinary people, these transformations were experienced not as grand historical events, but as changes in daily life. A merchant found long-distance trade less predictable than it had once been. A farmer faced heavier obligations and uncertain conditions. A soldier served under leaders whose authority might vanish within months. Across the empire, confidence in institutions gradually weakened. Civilizations rarely collapse in a single dramatic moment. More often, they become harder to trust. That psychological shift is one of history's most important turning points. Institutions depend not only upon laws and resources, but upon belief. People obey governments, invest in economies, and cooperate with systems because they expect those systems to continue functioning tomorrow. When that expectation weakens, consequences spread far beyond politics. Communities become more local. Elites focus on protecting private interests. Regions increasingly look inward. The shared confidence that once united a civilization begins to fragment. Yet, Rome's story is not simply one of decline. It is also a story of adaptation. Again and again, the empire responded to crisis by transforming itself. Administrative reforms expanded the bureaucracy. Military structures evolved. New centers of power emerged closer to threatened frontiers. Emperors such as Diocletian and Constantine reshaped the Roman state, creating institutions capable of surviving challenges that might have destroyed less flexible systems. The empire changed because it had to. From those changes emerged foundations that would outlive Roman political authority itself. Roman law continued influencing future societies. Cities founded under imperial rule remained centers of commerce and population. Latin evolved into languages spoken by millions, concepts of governance, citizenship, taxation, engineering, and administration survived long after the empire's borders had faded. In this sense, Rome never entirely disappeared. Its political structures fragmented. Its territories evolved into new kingdoms and states. Yet its influence continued moving through history, shaping civilizations that inherited its institutions, ideas, and assumptions about how complex societies should function. That legacy remains visible today. Modern societies depend upon interconnected networks that operate on scales even larger than Rome could have imagined. Food travels across continents. Information moves instantly between cities. Economies rely upon systems so vast that no individual fully understands them. Like the Romans, We often experience these networks only through their success. The systems work. Until they don't, perhaps that is why Rome still feels familiar. Its story is not merely about the ancient world. It is about the opportunities and vulnerabilities created by complexity itself. Every advance in organization, trade, and connectivity generates new strengths. It also creates new forms of dependence. The Romans believed their world was secure because it had functioned successfully for so long. History had other plans, and that may be Rome's most enduring lesson. The achievements that make civilizations great can also become the foundations of their future. Challenges. I am watching the past so we can understand the present, and together we keep history reborn. I will see you in the next era.